because love is evolution. Love is moving to more and more wholeness and safety and development in these things, right? So as much problems as we have in society, we can also see the beauty and the love in that growth as well. We can train our perspective, we can train our minds, and we can train our hearts to begin to see all of reality from the perspective of love. Reality loves existence, that the peach loves growing from a seed into a peach, that humanity on some level loves the growing pains of evolution. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to Lion's Heart. And in this video, we're going to be speaking about a very important topic. This is going to be a tier 3 topic at the very top of the pyramid. So related to spirituality, awakening, enlightenment, love, God, these factors. And today we're going to speak about the very important topic of training the eye of the heart. And what does that mean? That means training our ability to actually change our perspective and see love more and more in reality and more in life. And honestly, this is a big ask. I think this is a very difficult thing to do in today's world. And I'm still practicing it myself, but I really want to share this technique and this tactic that I've discovered. And I want to share it with you to practice, right? It's not about being perfect, but it's about really training that eye of the heart, that perspective, that ability to kind of zoom out and ask, where is love in this situation, right? So just to begin, first, we just have to acknowledge how many different perspectives there are on reality. For example, you might walk down the street and see a dog on the street, see a dog just walking down the street, and you have feelings of, oh, that's a cute dog. He looks friendly. He's a friend. He's harmless. He's cute. And another person might have like a trauma with dogs, and their perspective of the same dog will be fear and danger, and that's a threat, and I need to stay away from it, right? What I want to point out here is that there's many different situations and moments and things occurring in life, right? But we have to really get to the core that what we're perceiving, the reality that we're inhabiting, the reality that we're living in is very much something we're creating. The perspective that we have is not set in stone, and it's not ultimately true. It is something that can change. It is something that can be, morphed and picked apart and examined. So we can almost see it like a hierarchy. Like we can have higher perspectives on reality. We can have lower, more selfish perspectives on reality. We can have a more expansive, broad view on reality, right? And I'm going to give you some more examples. Let's take the Dalai Lama versus a New York City banker, right? Let's say, and this is just, I'm not saying there's any, truth around New York City bankers. I'm just saying for the example's sake, let's say the Dalai Lama and this New York City banker are sitting on the subway, and they both see this beggar, right? A beggar on the subway, homeless, raggedy clothes, he's asking for money, these things that we've all seen. And, the New York City banker looks at him kind of with disgust and maybe an air of superiority and kind of looking down on him, feeling maybe this pity, clean up, go get a job, just kind of stays away from him. He has all these assumptions that this guy's dirty, this guy's a nuisance to society, this guy's, this just annoying beggar or something. And the Dalai Lama might look at that same beggar and feel compassion, and he might feel, curiosity around why is this, how did this person end up in this situation? And maybe even looks for the human being, right, behind the beggar, like the human being there who was just trying to do his best, was just put in this life situation and somehow ended up in this situation. So the Dalai Lama is going to look at that with a much more loving, higher perspective, right? The banker is going to see it from a much more limited kind of selfish, ego filtered perspective of this huge wall of separation between him and the banker, and why he's so, him and the beggar, and why he's so different from the beggar, and why he's so much more evolved and superior than the beggar. So what we want to point out here is that we can train ourselves, right? We can train our perspective, we can train our minds, and we can train our hearts to begin to see all of reality from the perspective of love, from the perspective of someone like the Dalai Lama or Christ, and to take these different situations where, one person might see horror and evil, but another sees, love and beauty, and begin to question your perspective. Begin to question, is this actually correct? Is this actually true? Is this actually morally right? Or is this just an agreed upon thing within my culture? because even in like ancient Rome, and even not that long ago, 200, 300 years ago, slavery was seen as pretty normal. It was seen as a pretty okay thing to own another human being. That was seen as not a bad thing at all. You could be a slave owner and be a spiritual practitioner. There were many, actually. And they had no qualms about it. They had no second thoughts about it. I mean, some of the really more advanced ones did, but for the most part, they didn't really question this. It was just part of reality, part of life, right? And we look back at that now as like horrible and atrocious, right? 300 years later, right? And a question that helps me is to ask, okay, what in 300 years are people going to look back at us now and say, how did they not see that was wrong? How did they not see that was atrocious? And how did they see that was so out of alignment with love, right? And one thing that's come to my mind is, business practices, like the businesses that we all, partake in and buy from and, trade with, and their practices, the things they're doing to the environment, the things they're doing to other people, how they're exploiting other people, how they're exploiting animals, things like that. Politics, I feel like we can see, dopamine addiction and content addiction, and just the things that we're watching, the online adult content. These things, I think, in 200, 300 years are going to be seen as completely savage and completely, just like barbaric. I really think so. I think it's going to be like, I can't believe they lived in that time, right? Just like we do to people who lived in slavery and thought that was totally normal. So what I want to get at with here is that there's still many things that I'm sure me and you both are not picking up on, where we have our biases, where we have our cultural programming, and it affects our perspective, right? We don't see the beauty in things because there is this like lower perspective. If you think about life, you think about your life, the best moments in your life were usually drenched in some kind of love. It maybe was a lover, it maybe was a moment with family, it maybe was just doing something you loved, going to the park, or hiking, or playing a video game you loved, or something where there was love there. And if we look at reality, we can see that love is the basis, the engine that keeps reality going. Love is what makes reality move. You can say that it's survival. I think a lot of people will say it's just survival, but I actually don't think that. I think there's a spiritual component to the engine, the motivation, the drive, the energy behind why people are doing the things they're doing. That's deeper than just making it to the next day and just surviving and eating and reproducing and these things. So love is much bigger of a deal and much more of a core component of our lives and why we do the things we do than we give it credit for. So this is the importance of training the eye of the heart, training the heart, training our perspective to see and feel more love, right? And even if we look at spiritual traditions, we look at the wisest people in the world, most of them speak about love being this core foundation of reality. I had a teacher that I found on YouTube, and I emailed him about love. I said, where does love come into play in the spiritual practice, in reality? And he says, love is to reality as wetness is to water, right? And we have tons of quotes from, the Sufi tradition, from Rumi, just about the depth and profundity of love as God being one with love, as infinity and reality being one with love, that love is the foundational substance of reality, that love is the core of reality. We see it in non-duality, we see it in Hinduism, we see it in Christianity, Judaism, Islam. And without the dogma of religion, without the rules and restrictions of religion, if we really just go to the mystics, right, the mystics behind these religions who had these awakenings, they speak about love as being the core, the highest point, the highest potential of reality, the point of reality, the point of life. And as helpful as it is to have these mystics and these traditions tell us, they've done all the work, they've sat in the caves for 40 years, and to have them to tell us that love is the foundation of reality, it's very powerful, and that's very helpful and inspiring. But it's really something that we have to awaken to and realize ourselves. No one can do that for us. We have to bring our consciousness to that level ourselves, right? And one way we can do that is to work from the ground up, right? Instead of trying to go into the cave and have this like grand experience of love, and which is also powerful, but a lot of us are just living in day-to-day life. So we want to bring this practice into day-to-day life. We work from the ground up, right? So we work from the assumption that everything is love. Love is the highest vibration of reality. We just assume that, right? Part of this practice, we just kind of take that as truth. And what we want to do there is to have the truth revealed to us through that faith, right? So then we bring that assumption into everyday reality, right? We're sitting in traffic and we're asking, where is love in operation here, right? We're walking down the street. Where is love in operation here? We see something happening out in reality, out in a cafe or something. How is love functioning there? Where is love in this situation, right? And sometimes maybe it's just a sliver of love. It's just a little tinge of love in a sea of unconsciousness, right? There's just, oh, okay, I see it. It's just a little tiny drop there, but I see where love is in action. And sometimes it's very obvious and overwhelming, like a mother, running in front of a car to save her baby, right? Like that's like profoundly loving. That's very obvious, right? Versus like maybe sitting in traffic and people are being rude and people are being annoying and everybody's annoyed. You're like, okay, where's the love here? And then you kind of sit and think about it and it's like, okay, well, everybody's trying to get to work. Everybody is living their life. They're doing their best. They got up today, there's something that they love. There's something that they are working for. There's somewhere they're going, right? Maybe they're going to see family. They're going to see friends. They're not giving up. They're doing life, right? And everybody has somewhere to go. And somehow there's this like cooperation here. Like everybody's following the rules. Nobody's ramming their cars into each other. There's like a sense of safety for the most part. And that's really beautiful. So we can train the eye of the heart to see this beauty and see this love in everyday situations. We can take my glasses, right? We can take my glasses and we can look at them and say like, okay, these are just normal everyday object. These are just glasses. But then we can think about them deeper and we can think, okay, there's someone in human history, who spent probably their whole life, maybe a group of people, with this idea of helping people to see better, right? And people probably told them they were crazy. People probably told them, get a real job. People probably told them this is never going to work. And they just kept at it, right? They just kept at it. They kept working at it, probably thousands, maybe tens of thousands of errors, trials and errors, and improving and refining these things. I don't know the history of glasses, but this is just my example for how we can practice this perspective of love, right? And so they kept trying, and eventually they did it, right? And you might say like, okay, they likely did this for money. They likely did this because they could sell it. And there's probably partial truth in that, but I'm sure like to be driven to do something like that, to be driven to trial and error and like really keep working on something like that, you have to, I would assume that you'd have to be more driven by helping people and having a vision of making people's lives better and the quality of life better and being able to see better, right? So someone dedicated their whole life, multiple people dedicated their lives to this endeavor. And now I just get to simply, put these on and I can see much better. I can see much clearer. And the quality of my life is improved. And it's just this normal everyday object. It's just glasses, but like that's so incredible. And I'm so thankful for the people who dedicated their life to that and made my life better. And it's just a simple everyday object like glasses, right? And we can do the same with society. I think people look at society and they get kind of depressed and bummed out, but we can look at society and be like, okay, there's problems. There's definitely problems. It's not perfect, but look at how far we've come. Look at the medicine, the roads. If you have a medical problem, you can just go to the ER. There's dental procedures. The food is for the most part pretty clean. We have rights. We have like protected rights. We can say what we want, believe what we want, wear what we want. You have to realize how new all of this is and how many of our ancestors, like 99%, had no idea or like couldn't even imagine any of these kind of rights. So we actually live in a very developed society in terms of the rules and regulations and rights and laws. Like it's very developed. It's like a high level of development, much higher than the average of the human beings, right? So in that sense, it's really beautiful that we've gotten this far, like the education, the freedom of speech, the medicine, the safety. We have police, it's like we have these rights. So we have to take this, we have to see the love as, okay, wow, humanity's evolving, society's evolving. This is beautiful, right? And see the love at play there because love is evolution. Love is moving to more and more wholeness and safety and development in these things, right? There's definitely a spectrum of love, right? There's things that, like I said earlier, there's things that have like a drop of love in them, and there's things that are like very clearly love, right? And the nuance I want to make again is that what we're training ourselves to do is to see that drop in every situation. It's like, where is the love in function here, right? Because sometimes it is clouded by ego and selfishness. And we can even ask, how is something like genocide love? Like, where is love in operation in something like war or genocide? And this is a tough one. This is something I grapple with a lot as well. It's hard to look at the suffering of, the world and people who are just suffering needlessly. But we can even see that in some kind of twisted, selfish way, there is still love in action here, but it's a very limited, selfish love. It's a love for my tribe and my country and my group, and these people hurt us, so we're hurting them back, or we need protection, or these things. Now, I'm not saying that war and genocide is okay. I think we should stop that at all costs. But I'm just saying, for the point of this practice, is we are trying to train the eye of the heart, the perspective, to see some form, some drop of love in action in every aspect of reality, like just the complexity, right? Not seeing things as so black and white, evil and good. And the more and more we do this, the easier it gets. And it's not an easy practice at all. This is for an advanced spiritual practice. But as we do this more and more, we can really attune ourselves to that vibration of love and see things from that higher, more complex perspective. And to conclude, I want to leave you with this practice to ask yourself this question in the following moments, days, and weeks in your life, and just keep coming back to it in every, scenario that you see, whether it's sitting in traffic or going for a walk or sitting at a restaurant. Just keep asking yourself, or even dealing with family and friends and conflicts and these things, and ask, where is love in operation here? And where can I see more love? How can I train the eye of the heart to see more of that, love and innocence in reality? And maybe it's layered behind a bunch of trauma. It's layered behind, more selfishness or unconsciousness. But it's training ourselves to see that love in action, even in twisted and strange ways, right? And really coming back to that consideration that love is the engine of reality, that reality loves existence, that the peach loves growing from a seed into a peach, that humanity on some level loves the growing pains of evolution, and that love is really driving everything forward and ultimately driving everything into a more whole and unified form and aspect of itself, right? So I leave you with that. Lots of love, and talk to you guys soon. Cheers.